The nurse's phone lit up with a notification, and there it was, my wife in our bed with another man. 3 months in a coma, and this was how I discovered my marriage was over. My vision blurred, not from the head trauma, but from what I was seeing on that small screen she'd carelessly left within reach. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m., just hours ago. In our master bedroom, the one where we'd conceived our children, where she'd nursed me through pneumonia, where we'd whispered promises that apparently meant nothing, she was wrapped around a man who looked young enough to be her personal trainer. Because he was. The heart monitor beside me spiked. I forced my breathing to slow, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through her Instagram stories. There he was again, mixing protein shakes in my kitchen, using my grandmother's china, lifting weights in my home gym, playing fetch with my dog in my backyard, living my life while I'd been fighting for mine. "Mr. Richardson, you're awake!" The nurse rushed in, her face flushing as she snatched her phone. But I'd already seen enough. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids in college, and a shared life built on what I thought was solid ground. All of it meant less to her than her new toy. The accident came back in fragments, the 18-wheeler running the red light, the sound of crushing metal, the taste of blood and airbag dust. I'd been driving home early from a business trip to surprise Linda for our anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me now. I'd nearly died trying to get home to a woman who couldn't wait to replace me. "How long?" My voice came out as a rasp, throat raw from the ventilator. "Sir, you've been in a medically induced coma for 3 months. It's a miracle you're—" "No." I cut her off, my eyes fixed on the window. "How long has he been living in my house?" Her silence told me she'd seen the same stories, probably followed Linda's very public display of her new life. The nurse busied herself checking my vitals, avoiding my gaze. Outside, October had turned to January while I'd been suspended between life and death. Seasons had changed, so had my wife. "I need to make a call," I said, though every word felt like swallowing glass. "Mr. Richardson, you should rest. The doctors will want to—" "Please." I looked at her then, really looked at her. She was young, maybe late 20s, wearing scrubs covered in tiny hearts. Her badge read, Jennifer RN. She had kind eyes, the sort that had probably seen too much pain in this ICU. "Just one call." She hesitated, then pulled an ancient hospital phone from the bedside drawer. My fingers shook as I dialed a number I knew by heart. Not Linda's, not anymore, but my lawyer's. Marcus picked up on the second ring. "Richardson, Jesus Christ, I heard about the accident. Are you—" "Marcus, I need you to check something for me." Each word was deliberate, controlled. The old me might have raged, might have torn the IV from my arm and stormed home, but 3 months of darkness had taught me patience. "Our security system at the house, Gamam, is it still active?" A pause. "Should be. You had that premium cloud storage plan, right? Saves everything for 6 months." "Good. I need you to access it." Quietly. "Richardson, what's going on?" I closed my eyes, seeing Linda's Instagram story again. Her left hand on his chest, my wedding ring nowhere to be seen. I think my wife believes I'm never waking up. I need to know what she's been doing while I've been gone. The morphine drip couldn't numb this kind of pain, but as I lay there, something cold and calculating began to form beneath the hurt. I'd built my construction empire from nothing, survived a childhood of poverty, and clawed my way to success. I'd survived an accident that should have killed me. I'd survived this too. But Linda and her boy toy, they had no idea what was coming. "Marcus," I said, my voice growing stronger, "how fast can you get here? And bring a tablet. I want to see everything." Through the hospital window, dawn was breaking over Minneapolis. Somewhere across the city, in the house I'd built with my own hands, my wife was probably waking up next to another man. Let them enjoy their morning coffee in my kitchen, their workout in my gym, their stolen life in my home. They had 48 hours left. They just didn't know it yet. Marcus arrived within the hour, his usually pristine suit wrinkled, coffee stains on his tie. He'd been my attorney for 20 years, but I'd never seen him look so shaken. "Jesus, Richardson, you look like hell. Feel worse." I struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement sent lightning through my ribs. "Show me." He hesitated, clutching his tablet like a shield. "Maybe we should wait until you're stronger." "Show me." The first video was from the day after my accident. Linda, still in the black dress she'd worn to the hospital, leading Jake, that was his name, her 26-year-old trainer, through our front door. Her mascara was smeared, playing the grieving wife, but her hand was already on his bicep. Timeline? I kept my voice steady, clinical. He moved in completely by week 2. Started small, just staying over to help her cope. Marcus swiped through footage with the efficiency of a man who'd catalogued Betrayal before. By week 3, he'd moved his gaming setup into your office. Week 4, his motorcycle was in your garage. I watched my life being dismantled piece by piece. My father's vintage Rolex, unsold. My signed baseball collection, gone. The wine cellar I'd spent a decade curating, emptied. But it was the small violations that cut deepest. Him wearing my robe, using my coffee mug, sitting in my chair at the head of the dining table. The finances. Marcus pulled up bank statements. She's been bleeding the joint accounts. Transferred nearly $200,000 to her personal account. Claimed it was for medical expenses and household maintenance. I laughed, a bitter sound that made my chest burn. Medical expenses. While I'd been fighting for each breath, she'd been financing her boy toys lifestyle. The security footage showed shopping sprees, delivered packages, a new Ducati in the driveway. There's more. Marcus looked uncomfortable. The cloud storage picked up audio. She's been on calls with a divorce attorney, discussing your prognosis. The monitor beside me beeped faster. A nurse poked her head in, concerned, but I waved her away. I needed to hear this. She told him you were brain dead, that it was just a matter of time before she could... He trailed off. Pull the plug? I finished for him. When was the last call? Yesterday, right before she posted that Instagram story about new beginnings and learning to love again. My hands clenched the hospital sheets. Through the window, morning traffic crawled along 394. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that 3 blocks away a man was watching his world burn through a security app. Can you save everything? Every video, every transaction, every call? Already done. Backed up to 3 separate servers. Marcus set the tablet down, leaning forward. Richardson, I know you're hurt, but we need to be smart about this. Minnesota's divorce laws. The house is in my name only, I interrupted. Premarital asset. Never added her to the deed. His eyebrows rose. You sure? Check the records, I'm sure. I'd been called paranoid for keeping that separation. My first marriage had taught me caution. Now that paranoia would save me. What about the prenup? Ironclad. You wrote it yourself. Infidelity clause, asset protection, the works. I shifted, ignoring the pain. How fast can you freeze the accounts? I can file emergency motions today. Given the evidence of asset dissipation, do it. Everything. Credit cards, investment accounts, all of it. I paused, thinking. And Marcus, I want Brian Fitzgerald on this. He whistled low. Fitzgerald was the best private investigator in the state, a former FBI agent who'd helped me with corporate espionage cases. That's thorough. I want to know everything about Jake Thornton, where he came from, what he wants, who he really is. I closed my eyes, seeing Linda's Instagram post again. Her caption, "Sometimes life gives you second chances." And Marcus, not a word to anyone. As far as the world knows, I'm still in a coma. You're planning something. It wasn't a question. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. I'm planning justice. There's a difference. He gathered his things, preparing to leave. At the door, he turned back. Richardson, I'm sorry, nobody deserves this. After he left, I lay in the quiet room watching the ceiling tiles. Somewhere in this same hospital, families were celebrating recoveries, welcoming new life, holding vigil for loved ones. Normal grief, normal joy, normal love. But there was nothing normal about watching your wife redecorate your bedroom for another man. Nothing normal about seeing him park his motorcycle where your daughter's first bike had been. Nothing normal about discovering that the person you'd trusted most had been planning your funeral while you were fighting to breathe. The nurse came in to check my vitals. Jennifer, the one with the kind eyes. Mr. Richardson, you should rest. Recovery from traumatic brain injury requires... Jennifer, I looked at her. How long until I can walk? She frowned, checking my chart. With physical therapy, maybe a few weeks, but you shouldn't push. I'll do it in 1. Something in my voice must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly. I'll arrange for PT to start tomorrow. But, sir, whatever you're planning, be careful. Revenge and recovery don't usually mix well. I smiled then, the first real smile since waking up. Who said anything about revenge? I'm just ready to go home. But as she left, I pulled up the security app on my phone. Linda and Jake were in the kitchen, making breakfast in the cast-iron skillet my grandmother had given us, laughing, touching, living their stolen life. 1 week. That's all I needed. 1 week to get strong enough to walk out of here. Then I'd remind them both that I wasn't dead yet. The physical therapist was a former Marine named Rodriguez who didn't believe in the word impossible. When I told him I had 1 week to walk out of here, he just nodded and said, "Then we better get started." Every step was agony. My muscles had atrophied, my balance was shot, and my left side felt like dead weight. But each time I wanted to quit, I'd pull up the security feed. Tuesday, Jake selling my father's tools at a pawn shop. Wednesday, Linda meeting with contractors about renovations to my office. Thursday, both of them in the hot tub I'd installed for our 10th anniversary. "Channel the anger," Rodriguez said, during a particularly brutal session, "but don't let it consume you. Controlled burn, not wildfire." By day 4, Fitzgerald called with his report. I was between sessions, sweat soaking through my hospital gown, when Marcus put him on speaker. "Jake Thornton isn't his real name," Fitzgerald began. "It's Jacob Thornfield. 3 arrests for fraud, 2 restraining orders from previous girlfriends. He targets wealthy married women at gyms, poses as a trainer, and moves in when opportunity strikes." I gripped the parallel bars, knuckles white. "How many others?" 4 confirmed in the last 5 years. Same pattern. Husband has health crisis or travels extensively. He swoops in playing caretaker, bleeds them dry, then disappears when things get complicated. "And Linda knew this?" A pause. "No evidence she knew his history. But Richardson," Fitzgerald's voice grew careful, "she did increase your life insurance policy 2 months ago to $5 million. The room tilted. "Not from my injuries." Rodriguez caught my arm, steadying me. "She needs my signature for that," I said. "She had it. Digitally. Used your DocuSign account while you were sedated. Claimed it was for estate planning purposes. I thought of all those years, building our life together. Sunday dinners. Holiday traditions. Her father walking her down the aisle. Tears in his eyes as he placed her hand in mine. "Take care of my little girl," he'd said. "Richardson?" Marcus's voice pulled me back. "What do you want to do?" "Proceed as planned, but add insurance fraud to the list." I straightened, taking a step without the bars, then another. "And Marcus, draw up eviction papers. I want them served the moment I'm home." That night I couldn't sleep. Not from pain, I'd grown used to that, but from memories. Linda teaching our daughter to ride a bike. Linda staying up all night when our son had pneumonia. Linda on our wedding day, radiant in white, promising to love me in sickness and in health. I pulled up the security app one more time. The master bedroom camera showed them sleeping in our bed, her head on his chest where mine used to be. But something else caught my eye. My safe was open. The one behind the Monet reproduction in the closet. The one only Linda and I knew about. My hands shook as I zoomed in. Empty. All of it. The emergency cash, the bearer bonds, my mother's jewelry I'd been saving for our daughter. Gone. Jennifer found me at 3 a.m. doing leg lifts in bed. "Can't sleep?" She checked my vitals with practiced efficiency. "Did you know," I said, staring at the ceiling, "that the average person walks 3 miles a day? That's 1,095 miles a year. In 15 years of marriage, that's 16,425 miles. You could walk from here to Sydney, Australia and back." She sat on the edge of the bed, abandoning protocol. "That's a lot of steps together." "Yeah." I looked at her. "Makes you wonder when they started walking in different directions." "Mr. Richardson," she hesitated. "I shouldn't say this, but my ex-husband did something similar. Not as extreme, but I know how it feels. Like everything you built was made of sand." "What did you do?" "Rebuilt. With better materials." She stood, smoothing her scrubs. "Whatever you're planning to do when you leave here, just remember, the best revenge is a life well lived." But as she left, I pulled up the banking app. Another transfer, another theft. Another piece of my life sold off while I'd been learning to walk again. Rodriguez was right about controlled burns. But some fires were meant to clear the dead wood, to make room for new growth. And in 6 days, Linda and Jake would learn exactly what kind of fire they'd been playing with. I stood up, using the walker but barely needing it. 6 more days. Then I'd walk through my own front door and remind them both that resurrection stories don't always end with forgiveness. Sometimes they end with justice. Day 7. I signed the discharge papers with a hand that no longer shook. Rodriguez wheeled me to the lobby as protocol demanded, but I stood the moment we reached the doors. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Never been more sure of anything." Marcus waited in his BMW, engine running. Beside him sat Detective Patricia Hoffman from the Financial Crimes Division. In the back seat, Fitzgerald checked his phone one last time. They're both home, he confirmed. Just posted a workout video from your gym. The drive to Minnetonka took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of watching familiar streets pass by, each turn bringing me closer to the life I'd built, and the strangers who'd stolen it. January snow covered the lawns, pristine and untouched, like crime scenes waiting to be discovered. Remember, Detective Hoffman said, we need probable cause to enter. The security footage alone isn't— It's my house, I interrupted. I don't need probable cause to enter my own home. We pulled up to the circular driveway. Jake's Ducati sat where my daughter's car used to park when she visited from college. Linda's Mercedes, the one I'd bought her for her 40th birthday, gleamed in the weak winter sun. I stepped out first, legs steady despite the burning in my muscles. The front door, solid oak I'd installed myself, stood between me and whatever came next. Want us to come with you? Marcus asked. Wait 5 minutes, then bring the detective. I still had my keys. Of course I did. Linda had been too confident, too certain I'd never wake up to bother changing the locks. The door opened silently, and I stepped into my own foyer like a ghost returning to haunt. Music drifted from the kitchen, something young and pulsing that Linda never would have chosen before. I moved through my house, noting every change. My leather chair, gone. My father's photographs, replaced with modern art. The smell of another man's cologne, where mine used to linger. I found them in the kitchen as predicted. Jake stood shirtless at my stove, cooking eggs in my grandmother's skillet. Linda sat at the breakfast bar in a silk robe, not one I'd bought her, scrolling through her phone. Morning, I said. The skillet clattered to the floor. Eggs splattered across Italian marble. Linda's phone followed, the screen cracking on impact. David? Her face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Shock, fear, calculation, and finally, attempted joy. Oh my God, David, you're awake, you're walking, this is a miracle. She rushed toward me, arms outstretched. I stepped aside, letting her stumble past. Don't! Jake had backed against the counter, trying to process. Up close, he looked even younger, all muscle and no substance. A boy playing house with someone else's life. Mr. Richardson, he started. I know this looks bad, but Linda said, Jacob Thornfield. I watched his face change. That's your real name, isn't it? The one attached to 3 fraud arrests? Linda's perfectly rehearsed joy crumbled. David, please, let me explain. You were dying. The doctors said you'd never wake up. I was alone. Grieving. I pulled out my phone, showing her the security footage of her and Jake in our bed, timestamp from 3 days after my accident. This is grief. You were spying on me? The audacity of it, the wounded indignation of a thief caught red-handed, almost made me laugh. It's my house, my cameras, my life you were dismantling. I turned to Jake. Get out. You have 2 minutes before the police arrive. Police? Linda's voice pitched higher. David, we don't need to involve fraud, theft, asset dissipation, insurance fraud. I counted on my fingers. Should I continue? Jake was already moving, grabbing his shirt, his shoes, a con man's instinct for when the game was up. But Linda stood frozen, still trying to salvage her script. 15 years, David. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything. I looked at her then, really looked at her. Beneath the Botox and yoga glow, I could still see traces of the woman I'd married. The one who'd held my hand through my father's funeral. Who'd danced with me in this kitchen at midnight, laughing at nothing. That's why this hurts. Marcus entered with Detective Hoffman. Jake tried to bolt, but Fitzgerald blocked the back door. What followed was efficient, professional. Rights read. Handcuffs clicked. Linda's protests fading to shocked silence as the detective listed the charges. The house is mine, I told her as they led Jake away. Premarital asset. You have 48 hours to pack your personal belongings. Nothing else. Where am I supposed to go? Jacob has 4 ex-girlfriends, maybe one of them has a couch. She slapped me then, hard enough to rock my still unsteady balance, but I didn't fall. I'd learned to stand through worse. I loved you, she hissed. No. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting. You loved what I could provide. There's a difference. After they were gone, Linda in the Mercedes she'd soon have to return, Jake in the back of a squad car, I stood in my empty kitchen. Marcus offered to stay, but I sent him away. This moment, this reckoning, needed to be private. I picked up the skillet, my grandmother's cast iron that had cooked 1,000 family meals. Eggs still clung to its surface. I washed it carefully, seasoned it, placed it back on its hook. Some things could be cleaned, restored, made useful again. Others could only be thrown away. 6 months later, I stood in the same kitchen. Morning light streaming through windows I'd finally cleaned of another man's fingerprints. The house felt different now. Not empty, but expectant, like a canvas waiting for new paint. "Dad?" My daughter's voice carried from the foyer. "You home?" Sarah appeared in the doorway, her brother Michael behind her. They'd driven up from college together, their first visit since everything had exploded. I'd told them to take their time, to process it however they needed. Their mother was still their mother after all. "Coffee's fresh," I said, pouring 3 cups in new mugs. The old ones had too many memories. We sat at the breakfast bar, the same spot where Linda had sat that last morning, but now it held different energy, honest energy. "We saw the news," Michael said quietly, "about the sentencing. Jake got 18 months for fraud. Linda got probation and restitution. The judge had been lenient, considering it her first offense. I hadn't attended the trial. Marcus had handled everything while I focused on rebuilding. First my body, then my life. "How do you feel about it?" I asked them. Sarah stirred her coffee, considering. She had her mother's eyes, but my pragmatism. "She made her choices. You made yours. We're just glad you're alive." "The house looks good," Michael added, glancing around. "Different, but good." I'd changed everything. New furniture, new paint, new memories slowly covering the old ones like scar tissue. The gym was now my office. The master bedroom had become a library. I slept in the guest room, which caught the morning sun and didn't echo with betrayal. "I'm selling it," I told them. "Spring market should be strong." They exchanged glances. "Where will you go?" Sarah asked. "Not sure yet. Maybe something smaller, closer to the city." I smiled. Turns out I don't need 5,000 square feet to be happy. My phone buzzed. A text from Rodriguez, my physical therapist turned friend. We met twice a week now, not for therapy but for basketball. My body had recovered stronger than before, as if spite was a performance-enhancing drug. "There's something else," Michael said. "Mom reached out. She wants to meet, says she has something to tell us." I felt the familiar clench in my chest, but it passed quickly. "That's between you and her. Whatever relationship you want with her is your choice." "She's living with her sister in Wisconsin," Sarah added, "working at a yoga studio. Good for her." I meant it. Anger had served its purpose, but carrying it forever would only poison the well. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. Later, after they'd left for lunch with friends, I walked through my house one last time. In the closet where the safe had been, I'd hung a photo, not of Linda and me, but of my parents on their 50th anniversary. They'd weathered worse storms and found calm seas. The doorbell rang. Jennifer stood on my porch holding a casserole dish and wearing civilian clothes instead of scrubs. "Thought you might be tired of takeout," she said, then blushed. "This is weird, isn't it? I shouldn't have—" "It's lasagna." I could smell it through the foil. "My grandmother's recipe." "Then it's not weird at all." I stepped aside. "Come in." We ate in the kitchen, conversation flowing easily. She told me about her shift, about the patient who'd finally walked after months of therapy. I told her about Sarah and Michael, about selling the house, about learning to cook for one. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said, pouring wine. "I'm grateful." "For what?" "The accident, the coma, even the betrayal." I met her eyes. It stripped everything down to what actually matters. Turns out that's not very much. And somehow that's enough. She smiled, raising her glass. 2 second chances. 2 better choices. Outside, snow began falling again, covering the old tracks with fresh powder. Somewhere in Wisconsin, Linda was probably teaching downward dog to suburban moms. Somewhere in prison, Jake was learning that some games have consequences. And here in this kitchen, where my life had shattered and slowly reformed, I sat with a kind woman who'd seen me at my worst and still brought lasagna. The cast-iron skillet hung on its hook, seasoned and ready. My grandmother had used it for 70 years. It had survived fire, neglect, and misuse, but properly cared for, it would last forever. Some things were worth saving, others were meant to be left behind, and wisdom was knowing the difference.